Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. It is Major 3, Week 2, and I'm joined here, as always, with my co host at CDL Metrics. How are you doing today on this week as we approach the midway point of the qualifiers for this major?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. As a Rocker fan, a little disappointed in my guys from last week, right? They lose a game five, round 11 again, this time to New York, which was perfect revenge for New York from what they had happened to them at the major. And then they get swept by Seattle, and just looked horrible all around, especially in search, which is really concerning for a Seattle team that is awful at search and destroy. So I it's bittersweet though because I was fading them last week. I just think people overestimated Rockers' third place finish at the major because it's like you take a look back and they were 2-2 in matches. They were 8-8 in map count. Yeah, I mean Rockers, they've lost their last four matches. They haven't looked particularly inspiring in any of them. I guess the phase winners final was pretty good. They had a shot there to win, but yeah, since then it's been a whole lot of nothing. Um, but yeah, obviously we saw a lot of debuts from some rookies. Beans in Boston went 2-0. Mixed results for Vegas and Turiel. Toronto had a team change halfway through the weekend. Florida's, almost entire roster flipped over and they didn't win a map. And then there's Optic, of course. Optic played once and they got the victory over LAG. So yeah, mixed results for all those newbies. But yeah, looking forward to seeing more maps from those guys this weekend. And we've got a good amount of good games this weekend, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week. Last week was also really interesting as well. You've got again, open up the weekend, you had Toronto losing to Boston, which I did say to do that. I said kind of fade Toronto in that spot. I didn't actually pull the trigger on that
Yeah,
one. Regretted that one a little bit. The thing is, again, when it's your team, you're kind of like, okay, don't. I'm like. When you don't bet something, it's also like when you don't bet something and you know it's going to lose. It's kind of a win, right? You don't have to be on the betting side. You could just kind of like watch the train wreck happen and be like, I knew to not be on that train. So yeah, so they open up the weekend and then my initial thought was, okay, when are they going to do a team change? I'm like, oh, we're going to be talking about a team change. Maybe they'll do it into the major. And I did not think it was going to be Standy, by the way. I did not think it was going to be Standy. I thought it was going to be Insight. But then they swap out Standy for Hixie. And okay, um, and then they then turn around and crush the Las Vegas Legion. Now, that being said, that's like, okay, well, yeah, the Vegas Legion, they're not particularly great. Well, for starters, with actually technically, yeah, it's about in line with betting market expectations. The spread was -2.5, but it was juiced to the Vegas +2.5, and they covered that. But the thing of it is, Vegas just beat Thieves. So then you're like, okay, well then that means that Thieves team must really suck because they lost to Legion, who also lost to Toronto. Toronto wasn't looking too good. So then this Thieves team is playing FaZe, the best team in the game. It's like they have no chance. Well, somehow they turn around and beat FaZe 3-1. It's like, what is happening this weekend? And you have Seattle destroying Minnesota in a search and destroy. That wasn't supposed to happen. The script got all messed up this weekend, as some NFL fans would say. But no, this is the thing, right? That weekend, last weekend was nuts, and things don't make sense. Things are weird, and we're gonna go through every game and figure it out. So let's start off with that FaZe team that we just talked about. They are going up against the London Royal Ravens in the first match Friday afternoon. FaZe -2.5 +130. Ravens plus two. FaZe -2.5 +130. Ravens +2.5 -170. FaZe -800 on the money line. Ravens +475. This is on Bodog/Bovada, by the way. So this is pretty much this is pretty in line with what I've got on my model. I have FaZe slightly heavier favorites, but you can't really get much higher than -800 favorite. I got the -2.5 at 0.499, so basically 50%, just shy of a 50% chance, and I'm getting that in +130. I'm taking that +130 all day. And I mean, I've got London keeping the hard point close, but they're not going to be able to keep up in search, and they're not going to be able to keep up in control. And then, yeah, it's not particularly doesn't look particularly good for them. This screams to me 3-0 3-0. Um, this London team again didn't look particularly great last week. What are your thoughts on them here?
Yeah, this is my number one team in the league, power ranking wise, versus the number 12 team. I've got Atlanta as a 92% favorite to win, so maybe a little lower than you. Or
93,
in,
93, 93.
yeah, okay, in the ballpark. My odds to sweep for Atlanta, which is what we're looking for on the -2.5, I do have quite a bit lower than you do. You're closer to 50-50. I'm at 42%. And I actually think that might be a little on the high side. 42% is with plus 130 isn't quite value, so it's a stay away for me. And you're right, right? Hard point is the one area where London can maybe hold their ground against Atlanta and control. London's one map they have wins on is Breenberg Hotel. They're 3-8. It's a horrible record, but they're 0-3 on the other map. So like they play hotel a lot. They have wins on it, so that's something. And Atlanta love to play hotel too. They have 13 of their 22 games on hotel. Um, Maybe Atlanta. I don't know. It's tricky. It's all dependent on what Atlanta wants to do with their control veto because I don't know. Like, would you want to play London on hotel even though you already have so many reps on it? It is Atlanta's best control map in my opinion. So if the vetoes just go kind of according to, win loss, I think both teams would let hotel through. And if that's the case, I think London has a shot. Otherwise, like Fortress could be an option. Atlanta have only played that 3 times, though. It's almost an auto veto for them. But against London, maybe it's good practice. I don't know. I think London good enough in the hard point to make it interesting. Maybe they can get a control win if it's hotel. I don't know about the other ones. And yeah, search and destroy is a huge discrepancy. I'm just kind of giving those to Atlanta. So, yeah, with all that being said, it should be an Atlanta sweep, but it wouldn't shock me if it gets to a game 4. And even if it gets to that game 4, right, London, we've said like hardpoint is their one mode that is okay. Um, so there is a scenario where London win both hard points and force a game 5. I just, yeah, I have a hard time seeing that happen. London have just been in a downturn for a while now, and Atlanta are going to want to bounce back after losing to Thieves just this past Sunday. So I'll take Atlanta, but I'll take them in a 3-1.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean the thing of it is it's hard to bet that exactly because what is do we have exact score? Atlanta 3-1 is 210. So that's actually
Yeah, I'm not saying like take this exact outcome odds. I'm just saying like
this
I
is
think
what
most people will assume this will be a 3-0, and they're probably right, but like don't be shocked if London pick off one of those first 3 maps. So
that's
that's why it's
fair.
a stay
Yeah.
away for me.
I actually do agree that the hard point is probably the one they'd be the most likely to pick off.
Mhm.
It does not look good in the search, and I think the control B not safe for work. But yeah, it doesn't look particularly great for London. They might be able to pick off a map and good for them. It just this London team. It's extremely hard to see how this London team pulls out of this. I mean, they got a couple of good players. Nasty has not performed well. Asim has performed well. Scraps does not look particularly good. It's just not a good time for that London team. And I think they need either wholesale changes or they need to say, all right, guys, it's chalked. And that's it. Right. So I don't know which one's coming first, but I suspect that it's chalked is coming first. But we'll see and take a look from there. Next match on Friday. This one shaping up to be a good one. Toronto versus Optic. Toronto plus 1.5 -220. Optic minus 1.5 plus 165. Toronto minus 110 on the money line. Optic minus 120. So this actually is kind of weird because Optic is actually the favorite. Actually, no, Optic is the favorite. Yeah, and then they have the minus 1.5. But Toronto minus 1.5 can be found for plus 200 as well. I have, weirdly enough, Optic as sizable favorites here. I don't know exactly why, but I also don't know how much I can trust that, though. I've got Optic as a 67% favorite. Now, I think that's too high. I've got this as a 3-2. I think Toronto covers a plus 1.5. I think Optic, I weirdly enough have Optic having a less of a chance of covering a plus 1.5, a lower chance of that. And Toronto has a higher chance of covering a minus 1.5, but it's a very weird, like, the model thinks this is going to game five. It has Toronto favored in the hard points, but then Optic favored in the search. And as the model, like the model, usually if a team is better at search, then that invert like that really really helps them win, increase their win percentage, right? So especially when I've that search and destroy 6-2, right? So I yeah, the thing of it is, I don't know how Hixie being in there will help Toronto. I mean, the thing of it is, to be fair, Vegas is actually a pretty good search and destroy team, and the fact that they
One
took
of the best.
yeah, one
Yeah.
of the best, right? And the fact that Toronto took them to a round 11 and won it in the round 11, that might actually be people are like, "Oh, that's bad." Like, no, that actually might be a positive thing. If that happened, that might actually be a relatively positive result there. So I am not completely out on this Toronto team. I think Toronto does have a shot here. Just the model hasn't quite realized it yet. I wouldn't mind like a Toronto money line, maybe Toronto over, maybe over 4.5, maybe put a little on the Toronto minus 1.5. But it's tough though. I don't know what the right call is here. What do you think the right call is? What is your? I'm really fascinated to see what your model has because we Optic last week debuted with Dan Ghosty, and I kind of think underperformed expectations a little bit. I mean, they were really really good in hardpoint, not so good in the first search. Didn't pull out a control, but it was at Lucilo, so whatever. How do you have this? How do you have this in your model?
Yeah, kind of the opposite of what yours has. I've got Toronto at a 65% chance to win. I do think that's a tad bit high, but I still wouldn't go lower than like a 60-40 for Toronto. If you're going based on like since Major 2, I can see how you'd have Optic favor just because Toronto had that day at Major 2 that was just horrendous. I mean, they played Atlanta and Thieves and looked horrible in both matches and got bounced. So, like, yeah, I don't know. It's tricky just because we've seen so much of Toronto be good. This new roster change, I think it makes sense. I understand why it's Standy when you look at just his search performance on the year. He's been really bad. Like one of the worst, 3 to 5 players in the league when it comes to search and destroy. Just like getting first blooded too much, not quite doing enough damage on the map, just not picking up trades enough. Just he's a little short here and there. So you bring in Hixie, maybe that helps things. Right, they lose the round 11 to Vegas, but Vegas is a good search team, so you'd like to see him maybe pull that out. But the fact that they forced the round 11 is something. And they still looked good in their respawns versus Vegas, which you want to see. So TBD on the Toronto Ultra roster move. Standy's obviously a great player, but yeah, I don't know. I think Hixie can at least boost their search a little bit, and that's kind of what this team has been lacking since the beginning of the year. They're just kind of middle of the pack when it comes to S&D, and yeah, if Hixie can come in and help that in any way, shape, or form while maintaining their respawn, like it's a better team. So I totally get it. I would definitely have Toronto favored in this series. With that being said, yeah, I'm looking at like a Toronto minus 1.5. Because when you look at them squared up against Optic, I have them favored in hardpoint and in control by even more. And then search is pretty close, but I give the lean to Optic in that category. Um, so with that being said, right, a Toronto 3-1 to me is the most likely outcome. Um, yeah, we saw one series with Optic last week. They go game 5 against LAG. They just love going game 5s. And for the most part, they pull them out. They did last week. Their search is solid, even with a new player in the lineup. Ghosty looked decent. Had a couple good maps, had a couple bad maps. Again, TBD on that roster move as well. So, all in all, I like Toronto. I think they get it done in map 4. And yeah, it's less so like a fade of Optic, more just like I still believe this Toronto Ultra team is good. Despite the loss, the kind of ugly loss they had to Boston last weekend. They kept some maps close. They maybe should have, forced the game 5 because I believe that ended in 4 maps. Yeah, they lost by 8 points in that game 4. They lost the Albagra Fortress control. They couldn't get defense. So some things here and there to tweak with Toronto, but they're still very, very good. And yeah, I hope Optic, keep winning because it's good for the league, but I just hope Toronto beat them in this match.
Yeah, it's going to be a very good game. And like no matter what, I think this is a good game. I kind of like
We'll
the
learn a lot from this game.
Yeah, we will learn a lot. I'd like to game spreads and maybe over 4.5. I do really like over 4.5, but like I would not be surprised if someone just crushed someone 3-1. I wouldn't be surprised by that, but I think somehow this game finds itself to a game five, but I don't know. Moving on to the last match here on Friday, LAG versus Boston. LAG plus 1.5 minus 115. Boston minus 1.5 minus 115. LAG to win plus 165, Boston minus 220 on the money line. I my model does favor Boston here. Some slight value on the minus 220. You never want to see a minus 220, but I do have. I don't really have value on. I don't really have value on the minus 1.5. I have some slight value on the plus 1.5 for LAG, but very, very slight. I've got like 51.6% chance on a minus 115 is not a lot of value, but it's better than minus 115, 48%, right? So it's not great. I think the play here is kind of stay away from the match itself. Boston probably wins. And there's like a 50-50 chance they win in 4 games. Beans looked pretty good for his one start. Um,
I mean,
or no, did they
yeah,
play a second game?
they did play 2. He looked a little shaky in the first one, but he
Better.
did bounce back decently in the second game.
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought Boston looked like at least as good as they did before with methods. So yeah, maybe another weekend with Beans practicing. I know they had mentioned in an interview that he had some different call outs on the map. So you work that, you work through that over the next couple of weeks, try to get the team chemistry going. And yeah, this team could improve. Um, I'm I kind of wanted to fade Boston going into the week just because they did go 2-0 with the new teammate. And I mean, a lot of their maps could have gone either way, specifically in Hardpoint, right? They had an 8-point win versus Toronto in that first series. They had a 2-point win in game one versus London. If that goes the other way, London maybe finish that in four. Yeah, and I don't know, their other hardpoint losses were pretty convincing. So despite the 2-2 record in that mode, like they got outslayed, they got outscored. They look good in control. Their search looked fine. I don't know, like Boston are still a good team, and I kind of thought this price would be higher, but it's not. I actually do see value in the Boston minus 1.5. Not a ton, but enough. Just because I mean, tell me what LAG does well. It not much at all. I think these teams are close in SND. So if LAG can win game two and then a hard point, maybe they've got a shot to force the game five. But I don't know. I think Boston are just too good at respawn right now, even with the new teammate. So give me Boston to cover the map and a half. I don't love it, but I like it. How about you, Robert?
Yeah, I think you have to take Boston. I think you do. I don't like it, but if you're taking anything, I think you gotta take Boston minus 1.5. I think. I You can't. It's weird, right? Because this LAG team, the academy team, looked pretty promising. They brought in our cities. I don't know what the problem with our like with this LAG team is, right? Like they made a lot of changes. We were pretty happy with this roster, but they can't seem to get the job done here. I don't know what it is, but we'll uh we'll have to see as this goes along. Maybe they need another team change. Our city seems to be kind of bouncing up and down between like good and not good. So I don't know if that's the issue or not. But moving on to Saturday now. So the first game on Saturday is Subliners versus Ultra. Subliners minus 1.5 plus 150. Ultra plus 1.5 minus 200. Subliners minus 150 on the money line. Ultra plus 115. My model really, really favors New York here. I don't know exactly why. That seems really, really kind of irrational love of New York. But the thing of it is, I feel like if Toronto is able to beat Boston, I think my model just kind of hates Toronto. I think, or right now at least, but I think if Toronto is able to beat, if Toronto beats Optic, I think Toronto can definitely win this game, and I kind of do like Ultra in this spot. Subliners, yeah, they crushed a pretty weak Florida team. I'm not gonna give them a lot of praise for that. Um, but or and then they like they did beat Rocker. They beat Rocker 3-2, but Rocker got crushed by Surge. So the question is now, is Surge good or is Surge not good? That's the thing, right? If Surge is not good, then then that means that this Subliners team is kind of got beat a taken to the wire by a team that got beat by a bad Surge team, right? So I'm kind of more inclined to believe that this this Florida like this Subliners team it has some issues, and I think Toronto can take. I think a Toronto team that's suddenly resurgent can take them down. What do you think about that?
I mean, I like Toronto in the match against Optic. This match, just with the prices where they are now and how I have the series handicapped, like it's pretty spot on. I've got New York at a 57% chance to win. So favored, but not huge favorites by any means. I don't know, like if Toronto come out and look good against Optic, this price could drop where like, maybe both teams are minus 120 or something like that. And if that's the case, I think that's a good buyback on New York. Like last week, New York played Minnesota. It went to the game 5 round 11. Based on my views of Minnesota right now, right, that's a little concerning, but they dominated game 2, they dominated game 3, right? They won a fortress control in 4. They didn't have to go to that extra defense or anything. And their hard point losses, like, uncharacteristic for a team like New York, but they didn't get blown out of the water at least. Like they still held their own in Fortress and on Hotel. If a hill on one of those maps goes differently, New York maybe close it out sooner than game 5 round 11. So you pair that with the fact that they look dominant against Florida. They won major one. Like New York are still a good team. Toronto are still a good team. I just think I don't know. Like if Toronto looks shaky against Optic on Friday, this New York number could balloon up. Then I'm not interested in anything really. But if Toronto do what I think they could do against Optic, I think New York could have a nice price to buy back on Saturday. But it's tough. Like
Hmm.
these teams are close. The prices seem to indicate that. And I don't disagree. I think New York is just a little better pretty much in every game mode than Toronto. So that's why I lean New York.
Yeah, I I don't know.
It's
Yeah,
a good one to stay away from. It
it's a
should be
good
a
one to
heck of a
stay.
series, and
It
it's one
should
that
be.
I've wanted to see for a while. So
Yeah, this has been a matchup that we thought was brewing for a while. I don't think we didn't actually see it. I think we saw it Major One, but we never saw it in Major Two. I want to see what this new look Toronto team could do. I think they could be pretty dangerous. I think maybe a bit more dangerous than some people think they could be. So yeah, let's see what this Toronto team. Let's. This is going to be a real test of this Toronto team, right? No more. Well, I mean, Optic obviously will be too, but like Subliners should be one of the top teams in the league. Can Toronto get the job done against them? Let's see. Next up on Saturday, Surge versus Thieves. Surge plus 1.5 minus 220. Thieves minus 1.5 plus 165. Surge plus 105 on the money line. Thieves minus 135. My model weirdly likes Surge. I don't know why. I I really don't know why. They had two good game. They had like no.
they played once. They
They
swept
played once.
Minnesota.
Yeah, that's all. They had
Yeah.
one good game against Minnesota. And the mall's like, this is the best team ever, apparently.
Their search looked so much better though, Rob.
It did.
6-1 versus Rocker, who aren't a pushover in that game mode. Like
Uh,
that was impressive for a team that has shown nothing in that game mode all year.
I'll give it to you. You are correct. They should. It should. It really should. I've got a close hard point here, and then a competitive search. The question is like we search. We don't. The question is we. Well, actually, we do have some prices. So Surge plus 125 map 2. That's not bad. That's actually pretty juicy here, right? Like I really don't hate that price. Also, you could put on the Surge minus 1.5 plus 200, which is what I think the model is. No, it's not gravitating on that. It doesn't like that very much. But like, if Surge were to win the Search and Destroy, you can see a path where suddenly this Surge team can basically either 3-0 or 3-1
Yeah.
this Thieves team, right? Like if suddenly if Search is back open, I the thing of it is, again, it's this team is so variable, and they'll play at a high level for a bit, and then they'll fall apart, and they'll play at a high level for a bit. I think I'm kind of content to to take the higher side of this variance here and be like, all right, let's see what this Surge team can do. Let's see if they're as good as people say. Also, don't hate the idea of fading Thieves, right? Thieves didn't look great um against Vegas.
Vegas. Yep.
Yeah. And then now they did beat FaZe, which is impressive. You can never take that away from them. But they had a massive comeback against the or no, they had like Thieves had a big lead against them. They came back in the hard point. Um, I think that yeah, they just this everything fell apart in the search, and then in the second one, it was kind of a weird series. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that one again. I think I've already seen parts of it, but it was just such a weird series and how that all came apart and came together and just kind of all fell apart that I just don't know if I trust this Thieves team right now, especially not on land. So give me Surge for this one, and then if and here's the thing: if Surge wins this game, just like everything, like you put like you put your like free spending money, Florida plus 1.5, Florida money line on Sunday night. That's how you do this, folks. That's how, like, I know it makes no sense, but like then it'll be like, all right, Florida finally has a breakout now, and then they come back and they take out Seattle, right? Like that's how this would work. So that's how I'd put my chips there. I'd say Seattle beats Thieves and then they lose to Florida. That's my take, but let's hear your take on that.
Yeah. This is kind of juicy. Like Seattle, I have at a 42% chance to win. LA Thieves at 58. Um, Seattle slight favorites in hardpoint, slight favorites in control. Obviously, control can get a little wonky if the map is not what we expect, but search, I have Seattle at a 28% chance to win. And I think that's too low. Obviously, that's a really low number, but they've been horrible. But yeah, last week, like if Thieves want to play on Hotel, which is what we saw Seattle beat Minnesota on convincingly, I don't know, like that it's a good map for Thieves, but Seattle just showed that it's a good map for them too. Thieves, right? They lose Fortress to Vegas. Everybody loses to Vegas in Search and Destroy. That's what they're good at. And then Thieves get crushed by FaZe again in a Search and Destroy on LSC low. So yeah, they're a little shaky right now in Search and Destroy. I believe they're 0-4 in their last four. That goes back to the grand finals of Major 2. They lost 6-3 and 6-5. They lost to Vegas 6-4 and they lost to Atlanta again 6-1. So a lot of losses piling up for Thieves in that game mode. And if Seattle have continued to work at it and have found a map or two that they can be competitive on in that mode, yeah, like Seattle might be back. I know it was one game we saw from them last weekend, but like I don't know. Like if their search is that good, we already know their hardpoint and control are among the best in the league. Like just it's just how it is. So overall, I think Thieves probably win the series in map 5. So I'm like the it's weird because I have Thieves money line as a tiny bit of a value, but maybe not because my Seattle search and destroy number is so low. And then I have the Seattle to cover a map and a half as a little bit of value. So I don't know. I guess there's a natural middle there if the Thieves win in 5. But yeah, again, another match that I will learn a lot from. I think I'm just staying away. But gut says Thieves win in a 3-2, maybe bounce back and search and destroy a little bit. Because if they can force that map 5, right, like you're seeing Seattle on at least 2 search and destroy maps. So odds are they're going to be bad at one of them. And they're good enough in the respawn where they can take 1 or 2 of those as well. So give me Thieves ever so slightly on the money line, but it probably goes the distance, honestly. But this should be a banger of a series. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's this could also go to game 5. This could be a stay away as well. I don't know to trust this Thieves team. But yeah, this all I'm really excited to see this series. When like obviously we've criticized Seattle a lot and very fairly criticized Seattle a lot, but at the same point in time, when this team plays well, it is fun. When you see Pred and Sid playing at such a high level and being competitive in games, it's really fun. You see Pred making insane plays. That's fun. That being when Seattle isn't doing that, then there's something lost in the league when you don't have Sib and Pred doing all those things, right? So you need Mac and accuracy to make this team competitive, and when they do it, it's really fun to watch. So moving on to another game that is teetering between a Boston minus 1.5 and other team plus 1.5. Boston versus Florida. Boston minus 1.5 minus 120. Florida plus 1.5 minus 110. Boston minus 275 on the money line. Florida plus 200. This is again another one where it's like Boston should 3-1 this, but like, will they? Right? I mean, again, the line last time was Boston minus 1.5 minus 115. Now it's Boston minus 1.5 minus 120. And to be fair, those are two of the worst performing teams in the league. Florida and LAG have both had issues. Florida though feels a bit worse, but not 5 basis points worse, right? Like like a that's a very very small difference between a minus 115 and a minus 120 on a minus 1.5, especially when I think in many ways Florida is much worse than LAG. But I like this Boston team is pretty good. This Florida team is not pretty good. So that's my analysis. I mean, I don't know what this Florida team does now. Like they've this is what their third or fourth team change now. Like when do you start looking at the pieces that you haven't moved? When do you look at Havoc? When do you look at bringing Vickle back? When do you like? Maybe not Vickle. Vickle was good, but not great. Havoc, I still have a lot of questions about. Brack was pretty good, but Major Maniac was good to move. Dave Patty, yeah, but like Fellow, really? Like why again? Why are we doing this again? Right? Like I like stop. Why do people keep doing these retreads, right? Like I mean, I get okay, cool. Fellow was on a team that won a champ like a challengers event. Okay, why? This isn't helping. Like this doesn't work. Like you bring out like I don't know, Capsule, okay, Capsule's kind of cool, but like I don't think that was the problem. I think like I don't know, I would target Havoc and thing. But again, maybe we're being too harsh on Florida, right? Maybe there needs to be more time. They just had one game played against the toughest team, like the top team. Well, they played against FaZe, and then also New York, and I think they got 3-0'd both times. So that's not good. But like, I don't understand how they do team building. Do you have like is this on the right track? Is this completely off the rails even further somehow? What do you think?
Yeah, no, just going to the match real quick. Boston minus a map and a half. Absolutely love it. Very likely that this could end in a sweep just based on what we saw from Florida in Search and Destroy last weekend. Obviously, they had some really stiff competition having to play Atlanta and New York, but they had 3 Search round wins of those 2 games that they played. And that was their calling card, right? For the whole year, like they had been plucky in Search, kind of like a similarly built Vegas team, right? Like they're very good in search and their hardpoint and control is lackluster. But it's with Florida, it's like their search isn't as good as Vegas, but it's good. And their hardpoint is atrocious, whereas Vegas is at least just bad. And their control is just mediocre. So I had this question last week because there were so many changes coming to this lineup, right? Havoc stays, but Brack comes back in. Capsule and Fellow are brand new. So it feels like they're trying to compete in Respawn because the Respawn is horrible. It's like at the same time, though, you might lose all the search and destroy success you've had by shuffling it around so much. And I worry that's where we are now. Like, these guys aren't great in Respawn. The other guys weren't, but at least the other lineups they've had have been good at search. And I just worry that this team is like they'll I don't know, this could be the new worst team in the league now, and that wouldn't shock me. So yeah, Boston, even though I think they got a little lucky to go 2-0 last week, like Florida are just not I can't take them at plus 200 or even minus 110 to cover a map cuz like I don't know. I just wanted these prices to be way higher considering Florida didn't win a map last week and they got blown out in almost everything they played. But yeah, they're still somehow plus 200. I don't get it. I think they should be plus 300 at least, maybe even higher. Um, and yeah, I think if you're Florida, you probably dug your own grave when you benched Brack as your first roster move. He was kind of the one guy who was putting up numbers in just about every game mode. He's still a great search player, solid in hard points, solid in control. And like Havoc's been good at search. I get why he's on the team for that. Respawn for him, not so great. But yeah, if you bring like if Major Maniac is the main AR instead of Fellow, like maybe their search could be good again. And then find some kind of SMG to give you some respawn help. Maybe it is Capsule, but like I don't know. I just feel like they've they're trying everything when it comes to roster moves, and I feel like they've almost gone too far at this point. And yeah, it's just a team that you can't take right now unless they show something versus Boston, and they very well could. Boston's not like one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league. They're good, but like beatable. So yeah, Florida, if I'm a Florida fan, like hope that they can just make a game 5 in this series or in the next one, cuz yeah, it looks so bad last weekend versus the top teams in the league. Hopefully this week is a little bit better versus some slightly easier competition, but yeah, overall Boston in a 3-1, maybe even a sweep.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, moving on to the last match on Saturday: Las Vegas Legion versus Atlanta FaZe. Legion plus 2.5 minus 200. FaZe minus 2.5 plus 150. Legion plus 375 on the money line. FaZe minus 600. Over 3.5 minus 170. Under 3.5 plus 130. Again, this is one where it's just like my model still weirdly loves FaZe. I don't understand it. I vaguely have this as a 3-1. I don't. I only have about 35% chance of a 2-0. So, but that being said, we are getting the plus 150, which is still a little low there in terms of value. Legion has a shot in the search, but outside of that, I don't know. It's not gonna be pretty here. This is gonna be pretty ugly, I think. But we'll see. I don't know. Again, this it feels like there's a lot of games here that could be relative blowouts this weekend. What are your thoughts on this game? Do you see this being close or uncompetitive? How do you have this?
Yeah, 81% chance FaZe wins according to my model. Yeah, I don't know, I think Vegas is plucky enough in hardpoint where it might surprise some people. And I think FaZe is kind of sneaky bad at hardpoint. Like, if you had to guess what FaZe's win percentage in hardpoint is for the year, what would you say without looking at any numbers unless you already have them pulled up?
I do not have them pulled up. What's
Okay,
phases?
guess FaZe hardpoint win percentage
Hmm.
on the year.
It's
They've
got
played 36 maps.
it's a lot. It's a lot of maps actually. It's gotta be 80.
80% win rate
At,
in
at,
hardpoint.
at least north of 80. I'll go like 83%.
Okay, no, that's higher than anybody has. They're 47%.
Wow, that's
They're
really
17 and 19 on the year. Granted, they've played a lot of good hardpoint opponents, right? They play Thieves a lot. They've played Toronto. They've played New York a decent amount. Like, they play the best teams in the league a lot, but they're not up to snuff in that game mode. Granted, Vegas are worse at hardpoint. That's, you know, we know that. But they make up for it with a search and destroy that is just ridiculously good, right? FaZe 23 and 8 on the year. That's a 74% win rate. And for how much we talk about Vegas being good at S&D, like they're still a step behind Atlanta. Vegas 17 and 8 on the year, 68% win rate. So there's still like they're 6% away in win probability, but when you pair it with just that, FaZe are at least an average hardpoint team. They're an average control team, and Vegas aren't quite that. And in fact, Vegas are very bad at control. Like it really feels like FaZe will win this in a 3-0 or a 3-1. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Vegas are plucky and if the map one is their pick, hey, maybe they win that hard point. they're good enough in search, like their strats are good enough that yeah, maybe they could take out Atlanta. If there is a team in the league that could, you know, have a convincing search win versus Atlanta, I think Vegas is on that short list. But yeah, it all comes down to control, and that is just Vegas is atrocious at that. FaZe almost always auto veto Fortress. Vegas, let me check on that. They like to play Hotel a lot, which we know FaZe is great at. They have yet to win an LSCLO control. They also don't like playing Fortress. I don't know. It's hard to talk yourself into a Vegas control win at all. So that just limits their options, right? You got to win a couple hard points and a search. Good luck. You got to win a couple searches versus the best team in the league. Like, I don't see that either. So Vegas could make it interesting, maybe make it a longer series than what some people are expecting. But yeah, I got to give it to FaZe. And yeah, considering they played London on Friday and that should be a bloodbath, like if you want to take FaZe in this series, I would take them now. I mean, this number can't get much higher, I don't think. But like, I guess it could if FaZe just come out and look dominant versus Ravens, and everyone goes, "Oh my gosh, I have to get my money down on them versus Vegas right now." Maybe it gets up to minus 700 or something crazy, um, but yeah, overall, I think the prices are about right. But if you want to play like some interesting map spreads here and there, um, you can do that. Whichever way you want to go, I don't mind. But yeah, overall, I think FaZe take care of business this weekend versus London versus Vegas. Get two more wins on the board and lock yourself into winner's bracket.
Yeah, I think so. I think FaZe probably goes 2-0 on the weekend, and maybe goes 6-0, maybe 6-1. But yeah, I think this is pretty much this is I think pretty much a lock for FaZe to kind of pull this out here and win this. But the question is just how many maps will Legion steal? I feel like at the plus 150, I feel like you gotta take a stab at the minus 2.5, but you can also look at some spreads. Maybe like search spread, um, some control spread. They're really, really good in control, except apparently against thieves. So um, we'll see from there. Moving on to Sunday, Ravens versus LAG. Ravens plus 1.5 minus 240. LAG minus 1.5 plus 180. Ravens minus 110 on the money line. LAG minus 120. So this is again a game where it's like you just have to kind of pick the worst team here.
Yeah.
My model just weirdly likes London. I don't understand. My model seems to be really, really out on LAG after last week, I guess. But I can't believe myself taking London here. I feel like you got to take LAG. Like I don't know why. I don't know why the model is so strong on London here or so low on LAG. But I feel like you gotta take LAG here. This is their only match. Oh no, they played Boston earlier. So if they play Boston close, maybe they can turn this around. But I just find it really, really weird that the model likes London. What do you have this as?
Yeah, this I have pretty much right on the numbers. And as we get further into the season, like it's just hard to find value on a lot of these games. But yeah, I've got LAG as a 55% favorite. The minus 120, that's about right. So yeah, it's a stay away for me. It's not a game I'm interested in watching at all. These are two of the, worst three teams in the league. The loser of this match almost definitely is going to start in losers bracket. Yeah, and even if you win, like you might start in losers bracket. These teams are not good. But yeah, if you want to look at their results from last weekend, I would say London had the better loss. These teams only played once. London played Boston, took them to a game 5, outscored Boston in hard point and tied them in search rounds, and then got swept on LSCLO, which is not great. But like, yeah, better hardpoint team equaled Boston in search. If you fix control, like maybe you can win that series. LAG played Optic, got outscored in hardpoint by quite a bit. They got outscored in search and destroy 7 rounds to 10, and they squeaked a round 5 control win out from Optic. So yeah, I think you look at those two series and go, okay, London performed better. Um, look at their opponents, Boston and Optic, I'd put kind of in the same tier of teams right now. Like, not the best teams in the league, but right there with the best. So yeah, if you just want to go off of last week, I can get the London argument, but I don't know. I just think LAG are like LAG don't have a game mode that they're atrocious at. London's Search and Destroy is pretty bad. And I know they did split their rounds last weekend versus Boston, but Boston is not a great search team. So the fact that you're tying them in rounds and in maps, it's like, okay, that's kind of what we expected from that series, I guess. LAG are at least competent in search and good enough in hardpoint and control where I think, the hardpoint maps probably get split depending on which one gets game one and which one gets game four. I think control, yeah, you lean London, but that could go any which way. And then LAG I just have as a pretty sizable favorite when it comes to S&D. So that's where my numbers come from. But yeah, just to stay away. I have no interest in this. But hey, one of these teams will win, and that's good for them. I don't know like, there's no positives from this. I got
No,
nothing.
this game will happen, and then it
Yes.
will end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Minnesota versus Optic. Minnesota plus 1.5 minus 220. Optic minus 1.5 plus 165. Minnesota plus 125. Optic minus 165 on the money line. This is Minnesota's only game of the weekend. I have Optic as huge favorites here. I got the 3-1 model. Has definite value on the Optic minus 1.5. It's close though. I only have Optic covering the minus 1.5 43% of the time, but there's definitely value when you have that as plus 165. Do you have any hope for Minnesota here, or not?
Nah.
Nah.
I mean, we saw what they did last week versus Seattle. That was horrendous. The New York series was, they at least gave themselves a shot to win that in round 11. But yeah, I don't know. Like, this is a tough one, right? Like, we've seen this Minnesota team be not good for 3 or 4 matches in a row. And we've seen this Optic team with this lineup one time. They got the win in a game five. Going back to their run at Major 2, it was okay. I don't know, man. I have hard points really close, so those probably split. Search and Destroy, I give a definite lean to Optic. Minnesota, like, people like to talk about Minnesota as this team that, like, can be competitive in S&D, and like, it's their worst game mode in my opinion. They have a 40% win rate. That's worst among all their game modes. Hardpoint, they're 47%. Search, they're 40%. Control, 65%, but that is higher than it probably should be. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Optic probably get this done. They probably, yeah, I'll say they get it done 3-2. It's a long series because it always is between these two teams. Um, yeah, last time these teams met was the whole Cammy Elisilo control, getting stuck in the streak, Optic, forfeit the series, that whole thing. So that'll be fun just to watch it from that perspective. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess Optic play earlier in the week, Minnesota don't. And Optic I really don't like in that Toronto series. So, maybe if Optic fall there, their price drops a little bit and enough for me to take. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see where we are on Sunday, but I do lean Optic. Maybe not as much as you, but yeah, it's hard to buy into Minnesota right now as a fan and as a backer. Like, it's tough.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Um, just looking at this in the last week, so when Minnesota played subliners, Afro was negative 22, Bance was minus 12, Attach was plus 7, and Cammy was plus 3. When they played Seattle, Afro was minus 14 and Bance was minus 20. Attach was plus 1, Cammy was plus 3. So it's very clearly Afro and Bance not uh, keeping the pace here with the rest of the team, and it's weird because it's
Last week, yes. I
yes,
will, like, if you look at the year numbers for Rocker, like, I kind of wish they had made a move before Major these qualifiers here, major three qualifiers, because Cammy just he's been better lately, but gosh, he just for an AR player in this league, he does not do anything well. Like, and his search is atrociously bad. He's just getting first blooded way too much. And like this team very reliant on Afro to make plays in search and destroy. And if that's the case, like Cammy's just got to stay alive, and he just doesn't do that enough. So yeah, maybe Afro and Bance are in a little bit of a downslide, but like if there's any player, like if you can put Illy in for Cammy, like maybe that's something, knowing that Illy is at least going to be okay in search and destroy and like half decent in the respawns. Maybe that's a move you could make, but yeah, Minnesota, they're very slow to make roster moves. They had a third place finish at Major 2 despite the 2-2 record, the 8-8 map count. Like, of course they weren't going to make any changes. So, yeah, as a Rocker fan, I've hit that point in the year where it's like, yeah, this team is fine and they'll just be fine for the rest of the year. Um, Hopefully they can make champs. I think they will, but like I just don't have many high expectations for them going forward. But yeah, maybe they beat Optic. I don't know. I think I am mistaken when I said the last time these teams met was that forfeit game. I do believe these teams met at Major 2 in the winners round 2. Yeah, because Minnesota beat New York, Optic beat Thieves, and then Minnesota actually came out and 3-0'd them. So who knows? Anything can happen. Optic obviously have a new roster from that, but yeah, I lean Optic here, but I think it'll be a long series, and this kind of series always happens to go long. So
Yeah, I think so too. It's just yeah, I mean, you want to see this Minnesota team succeed, right? You want Afro to do well, right? He had such a great year last year, and that seems to have almost gone to waste now. So it would be really sad if Afro wasn't able to be on a really good competitive team. And I think hopefully after this week we can hopefully eventually if this team I think this team do you think team needs a team change or not? Do you think they need a team change?
Rocker, yes, I think
Yes.
take
Okay.
Cammy out. You can find some other flex type, AR player that can at least like just be alive in search and destroy. Like just don't get picked and this team all of a sudden becomes an average search and destroy team. And like you look at Cammy and Respawn and it's okay. Like but you can find a better player. I just worry, right? Minnesota's slow to make changes. They maybe don't want to, get rid of that Cammy Bance Ultra connection or you know, the British boys connection because three of them are from Great Britain. But yeah, I think it'll take a really bad qualifiers in Major 3 for that to happen. But I think we're down that path, right? You have an 0-2 start. You play Optic this week. You play Vegas next week. And actually, if Minnesota played Vegas today, I'd have Vegas as favorites, believe it or not.
Wow.
And then you end with LA Thieves, which we know who the better team is there. So it looks like a loser's bracket start for Rocker. I know that might be a little quick because we've only seen them play twice so far this qualifier, but like
That's a lot of the
yeah,
matches.
yeah, they don't have anything easy. They don't get London, they don't get a LAG, they don't get a Florida. It's three, tough series, and you're already down 0-2. So I think they'll have a bad end of the qualifiers, but maybe that will inspire some kind of team change.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Last match of the weekend. Florida versus Seattle. And this is the book the line here is all over Seattle here. Florida plus 1.5 plus 125. Seattle minus 1.5 minus 165. Florida plus 230 on the money line. Seattle minus 325. It is very hard to justify betting on Florida here. The model does not like it either. The model is like Seattle will win this 3-1. Um and actually an outsized chance of a 3-2. 3-0. But I ugh, it's not something about this game is like you could stay away from this. I think this is a game where you could be like I'm staying away from this game. I don't trust this. I feel like at some point Florida will break through it will be false hope. I also feel like at some point Mac and accuracy are going to have a bad day. I don't know when those will happen. If I am betting on Seattle versus Thieves, I hope that will not be on Saturday. I hope that will be on Sunday for Seattle to have a bad game. But this is the thing, right? Like at some point the Florida team will break through and do something unexpected, and especially if they've gotten 9-0'd in their first three matches, and then because I think if they get 3-0'd against Boston, or yeah, they're playing Boston. Say they get 3-0 against Boston. That would put them at 9-0 in the qualifiers. What's this line? That's like plus 1.5, plus 150, right? Then you're suddenly looking at Seattle. People are going to be all over Seattle. Seattle, especially if Seattle beats Thieves. People are like, oh, Seattle's back. They figured it out now. That is a warning sign. That is a danger, 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 danger. I don't know. This is basically unbettable at this point, but if the line shifts to Florida a bit more, I could see myself going with Florida here. What do you think?
I'm yeah, I'm surprised, but I'm fading Florida hard this weekend. Yeah, last weekend was the fade on Minnesota. That seemed to work. This week I'm fading Florida. I just don't think these prices have adjusted enough. Like just based on what we saw last weekend from Mutineers. Like I don't know, you're playing Boston and Seattle, who are two great hardpoint teams, two pretty good control teams, and like two not great search teams. And your Florida Mutineers, right? Your one game mode so far this year that you can hang your hat on is search and destroy. But now that you've messed up your lineup so much, I don't even think you can have that. Like, I have Florida as huge favorites in the search, but like, throw that number out because this Florida team is completely different. And I know I get your argument with like the Florida team just randomly shows up sometimes, but right? That's the Awakening, Skies, Vivid, Havoc, Neptune. Like, this is a completely different Florida team this year. They have 5 hardpoint wins on the year, Robert. They're 5-24, 17% in hardpoint. And we think they're going to get a win or two versus Boston or Seattle. No, like, I don't think they are. Their control is just not good. Like, they never play Fortress. That's fine. That's an auto veto. That's a weird map anyway. But 3-5 on Hotel, 4-4 on El Asilo. Like, okay, but if you're one of the other teams, you just veto that. Like, I don't know. It's just I'm really, really off Florida this week. I'm just shocked their prices are not plus 300 or more. Like that's where they should be. And even then, I don't know if I'd take Mutineers. So yeah, Seattle in this match minus a map and a half. Really, really like it. I actually have that happening. Let's see, 72% of the time Seattle covers that, and that might not be high enough considering how big of an underdog I have Seattle in search. So, yeah, Seattle minus a map and a half here, and then the other two games, if we want to just kind of do a quick summary, Boston minus a map and a half versus Florida on Saturday, and then the other one that I kind of like is from Friday. Toronto Ultra alternate minus a map and a half versus Optic. So I'm taking a lot of minus a map and a halves, but hopefully if that Toronto one comes through, that'll cover the other two. But yeah, I'm just fading Florida, I guess. That's the theme of the week.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I agree. It's just the fact that for like if that minus 1.5 was smaller, I'd probably bet the Seattle side here.
And
But
maybe
it's
it
just
will.
yeah,
Maybe it will if Seattle loses the Thieves, right? Then you could get a really, really juicy price for this match come Sunday. So maybe that's kind of what we're cheering for. Um, Cause yeah, this
well,
Florida
okay.
team, man, it's bad. It's so
S-
bad.
Seattle 3-0. So Seattle 3-1 is minus 165. Seattle 3-0 is plus 225. That seems mispriced.
For this Florida game, plus 225.
Yeah, so they because they have Seattle as basically even with Florida on search and destroy. That's why.
Yeah, and I think that's not a bad price point to put him at.
You have this even. I have Seattle
No, I
as
don't.
like
Like
well, actually, I
I
have it
have
close. I have
I
I have
have
Seattle six
Seattle.
five 6-5 in the search.
Yeah, I have Seattle at a 24% chance to win search, but again, that doesn't take into account that they looked great last week after being horrible for 2
Mhm.
months
Mhm.
against a competitive Surge team, and it doesn't take into account that Florida looked atrocious in Search after being very good in that mode for 2 months. So, right, that's kind of the one downside, but if I just kind of, manually do the calculation of like, all right, let's call Seattle, Florida a straight up 50-50 in Search. Now Seattle becomes this just massive, massive favorite where it's like, yeah, a 3-0 and a 3-1, one of those feels inevitable at this point. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I gotta fade Florida,
I don't
which
hate
I'm
the
fine with
Seattle.
because they're
Yeah.
bad.
I don't hate the Seattle 3-0. Let's maybe put something on that. I can't justify -1.5 at -165. That feels really, really steep. I gotta say that. I feel like that's a little steep, but I could be
Fair
wrong
enough.
about that. But anyways, so that is it for us this week. What are your that was actually felt like that was pretty quick. It was
Yeah.
about an hour though. But all right, what are your favorite bets this week? Let's recap your favorite bets. We have time for this this week. Let's do it. What are your I don't know, pick 3 bets, I guess.
Yeah, 3. I've got 3 right
Okay.
here. A lot of matches I have not much of an opinion on. Maybe I like some matches further into the week if some results go the way we want them to. But yeah, so far Friday, Ultra minus a map and a half. I see at plus 200. I still think they're a better respawn team than Optic, and good enough in Search where I think they should be favorites, and I think it's likely they get it done in map 3 or map 4 if they do win. So Ultra I like against Optic. The next day, Boston minus a map and a half versus Florida. Again, just a far superior respawn team and a Florida team that is all of a sudden not good at search, maybe. And then same argument, Seattle versus Florida on Sunday. Really good respawn team, a shaky search team that may have figured things out. I just, yeah, I don't think Florida forced a game 5 at all this weekend. That's kind of the theme.
Yeah, I'll go optic optic well, money line slash -1.5 against Minnesota. I like that. I really like the Boston -1.5 against Florida. I like that as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'll go at phase -2.5 against London. I'll call that my third bet. So
Okay.
we'll go
First
opt.
game of the week.
All right, so yeah, so there you go. There's my 3 bets. There's your 3 bets. We'll compare next week to see how we do this on the college football one. We usually do like our like picks. We do like a bunch of picks, like spread picks usually. Now spread picks are a bit different here, but we can bet against the spread, the map spread. But it's not the same because in college football, obviously, you get like -110 each side.
Right. Right.
Here, it's more variable, but
You can check on, return on investment though.
yeah,
You
for
can
sure.
tweak it however you want, but
We'll
but
do
yeah,
some. Yeah,
I'm glad we're in agreement for at least our favorite picks for the most part. And yeah, I don't hate that Optic versus Minnesota thing. Yeah, I'm okay if you want to continuously fade the Rocker. They're just in this spot now that is not good. So,
yes,
all in all, like honestly, when you look at the standings for Major 3 qualifiers, I think the losers bracket is kind of already set. And I know, again, this is early since we've only had 1 week of games, but like my bottom 4 right now are LAG, who are 0-1. They play Boston, London. There's a possible win. Florida, again, another possible win. And Vegas, which, like, yeah, okay, LAG could maybe win those last 3 games, but more than likely they'll get maybe 2 of them. Rocker, I've got down there. They're already 0-2. They have Optic, Vegas, LA Thieves. I've got them as underdogs in all of those. Florida, 0-2, looked horrible last week. They play Boston, Seattle, and LAG. Maybe they can win that LAG game, but again, that's not until next week. And then London, 0-1 so far. They play FaZe. Haha, good luck. LAG, that's winnable. And then they end with Seattle and Toronto, which are tough. So, yeah, to me, like, winner's bracket, loser's bracket might already be set with those 4 in the bottom. But stranger things have happened, and maybe my Rocker can bounce back and get a nice win over Optic this week. Who knows?
yeah. So all right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will be back next week with our picks for week 3, and then the week after that for the week major 3 picks. See you guys then. Have a good week.